Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com, produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by our good friends over at Robeson Oil, the house that service built by Lipolis Electric. Don't get left in the dark. Get Lipolis by White Plains Hospital and by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth through a fiduciary standard, along with Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and by Tompkins Mayorpac Bank. I'm John Marino, and this is on the Beat in Westchester. We are joined by John Bailey. John Bailey is the publisher and executive editor of White Plains CitizeNet Reporter, White Plains CitizeNet Reporter.com, and he hosts a couple of shows that you catch on TV around Westchester and the FiOS and Altice outlets in Westchester. Those shows are White Plains Weekend, People to Be Heard. John Bailey, welcome back to Westchester Talk Radio. It seems like we're just going in circles talking about COVID and more COVID. And now the numbers regarding COVID are going up again locally due to the Delta variant, maybe the Lambda variant too, and who knows what other variants and strains might be in there and out there as well. What the heck is going on here?
Well, it's I believe can be traced directly to the July 4th holiday weekend, where I called it the anything goes weekend, and anything went.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what happened is that right on schedule, about 14 days after July 5th, the uptick started to go up past 1.5% infections, and then in the last 8 days from Sunday, 828 new cases. That's 100 a day.
In Westchester. That's
yes.
A lot.
Yes, it is. And
so how concerning is this?
Well, it depends. As the county executive said, hospitalizations are not really going up exponentially like they did on proportion back in the second wave and the first wave. However, it does mean that could spread, particularly with the CDC deal yet this week that, hey, you may be vaccinated, but you may be breathing in COVID and breathing it out. And so it could spread. That is a new wrinkle that just came on the scene, and it's got everybody worried. So now the question is, how do we deal with that? I think the masking urging that George Latimer did yesterday in his COVID conference, well, really serious conference by him. He said that he said right off the bat that it's obvious that it's spreading, and he admitted that bluntly, and then spent most of the time, saying that this is what we have to do. We have to mask up. We got to see who's vaccinated, and we have to concentrate on vaccinations. And I thought this was a good effort by him yesterday afternoon.
Do we face lockdowns again? Any kind of a lockdown, do you think?
Well, not if it was up to County Executive Latimer. He says he does not have the power to do that. Only the governor can do that. But the governor has been missing lately. He's not on top of the situation.
He's busy.
Well, that's the whole problem. Spending 11 hours in a hearing answering these charges and giving his explanation, that's unbelievable. They didn't even interview Trump that long.
So where is the lieutenant governor in this? Kathy Hochul, can't she step in and do something?
Well, actually, it really retains the power now lies in that Assembly and State Senate committee that oversees, and we have not heard a peep out of them on COVID. Mm-hmm. I mean, here we've got State Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins, who led this effort to curtail the governor's powers. And what is she doing? She's promoting the National Night Out tonight down in Yonkers. Please, That is not a big. That is a big deal, yes, but
Right.
it is a very small deal compared to what happens when people are going to spread that virus at a public event like that.
How much of a
Not
concern?
responsible, right?
How much of a concern is what's going on down at the southern border? We keep hearing that they detect people who have COVID. More than 80% of those crossing the border are not vaccinated. And then those who come into this country across the border are being gathered up and knowingly, when they examine, they're not examining everybody, it seems, but if they find a COVID positive person, they have just as much of a chance, that person, of being released into a local South Texas community or being put on a bus and shipped somewhere else across this country. How much of a concern might this be with this recent spread, the current spread of COVID again?
Well, if they are releasing a COVID infected person with not directly to a facility in the area where they're being dispersed to, that doesn't make sense to me. Does it to you? It certainly doesn't.
No.
What it means that the Biden administration does not have enough cooks to handle all the pots he's stirring.
Mm-hmm.
To say the least. And he's had 7 months in office, and they should be doing a better job at the border than they're doing. Obviously, it concerns me, but certainly the spread is not all related to the border. Certainly isn't, because the spread started happening like 6 months ago. Nationwide.
We see these numbers go up, go down, go up, go down. And now the big push for everybody to get vaccinated, which maybe there should have been more of a push before. So we see how much of this country at this point, almost 8 months into the first arm being jabbed with a vaccine back in December, we still have about 40% of this country that has not been vaccinated. This seems to be how we are going to stem this current spread, most of all, getting people vaccinated. We've talked about it before. How can we now convince people further to get vaccinated, or is it just a sense of, if you haven't gotten it by now, and you see 4 million people are dead around the world, and 600,000 are dead in this country, and we see the uptick in Delta cases and other forms of COVID going around, mostly Delta, if that doesn't scare you into getting your arm jabbed, maybe nothing will.
Well, we have a lab for that. It's called Florida. And I mean that in all seriousness, because we had Governor Santos basically preventing people getting vaccines, preventing organizations and restaurants from enforcing showing vaccination cards and demanded credentials. He policied that in Florida, and now Florida is out of control. I was reading today that in a Associated Press report on Florida, how bad it is down there. I was supposed to go to Key West to a reunion, 50th anniversary of my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, but I don't think we're going to do that. I mean, I may walk into Florida and go out with my boots on.
Why is Governor DeSantis so stubborn about all of this?
Well, I think it's simply he wants to be president. He wants to secure the Trump base for himself. And he's just being a typical politician, a me first person. Me first. And that's what every politician basically is.
I had somebody come to me, somebody who's a liberal Democrat, come to me the other day and said, if the Republicans really want to give us a hard time, I have a thought on a campaign ticket, because I think it's going to be Donald Trump, and then as a running mate, Ron DeSantis, to which I said, how about Nikki Haley with Donald Trump? That might be more troublesome because Ron DeSantis is such a polarizing figure.
Well, Well, basically, I'm not really going to worry about Trump until it gets there, because so many persons who are unvaccinated and won't get vaccinated are going to die.
And I'm not convinced he's running again. So
yeah.
Well,
he's like old, and like I am, and I will say this, that it is very tough to maintain an edge as president when you're that old. It just is.
You're not a guy. You're not old. You're experienced.
Yes, I like to call it aged up.
Aged up. I like that term.
Aging up, right.
Aging up.
And like, speaking of an aging up, or an ager as I call them, like George Latimer has absolutely the hardest working man in show business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he is indefatigable, and he's dealing with lots of stuff. He has to go from one crisis to another. He is lurching from one to another, and he's sort of limited on his powers. But hey, somebody has to wake up Albany and say, hey, we've got an epidemic going on down here. What are you guys going to do about it? Again. I mean, there is no voice. Albany is not talking about it. Anybody in Albany. I mean, Cuomo keeps putting out these little press releases and his stats in press releases saying we need to vaccinate. Not enough. Because I remember when Governor Cuomo came on every day with a reasoned approach, and we stopped this epidemic twice.
Well,
and now he's missing in action.
Charm, right?
He's missing in action.
They say the third time's the charm. Maybe after stopping it, we hope this time, third time around, that will be it. I think we shall see.
Well, look, I certainly hope so. However, it is not going to stop if you have that Delta variant shooting through the school population in September when we open all our schools, hoping to get the economy back to normal. And the county executive does have the luxury of not being able to legally put in restrictions on Westchester on his own, other than county-owned properties and county workers, etc.
Are we facing mandatory mask mandates of some sort? Not suggested masking, mandatory mandates again.
Well, if you're not masking, you're putting other people at risk, because, as I mentioned earlier, the CDC, and I have to say, the CDC's mixed messages a month ago that if you're masked, you don't have to wear a mask anymore, because if you're vaccinated, you don't have to. And
now they say put it on
really
in a high-risk area.
Yeah,
How do you know what area is high risk for COVID nowadays? Unless you tap people on the shoulder and say, hey, do you have COVID? Did you have COVID? And you go around, let's say you go to a coffee house and you tap people and you say, and you take a survey, then you add it all up and say, all right, it's not high risk. I can keep my mask off. Or you say, well,
I went to the movies last night.
This is high risk around here. I'm going to keep my mask on.
Yeah, well, I do that when I go to Lifetime Fitness to swim. I have a mask on when I go in, take it off, and when I go into the pool, and put it back on again when I get out of the pool, because I don't know. I mean, they have children running around that locker room. They have men who are not masked in the men's locker room, and I'm about the only one wearing a mask there. Now, in theory, I am vaccinated, so I may not have to, but I may be breathing it in and then passing it around to somebody else. That's the whole point. And I think you got to have a mandatory mask policy very soon throughout the state. I really do. Otherwise, we're already off to the races. I think the latest positivity statewide was 3%. That is not good.
That's not good, and moving right back to the area where we used to be.
It's not moving. It's there.
It's there. Yeah.
It's there. I mean, let's say that the infection rate is a devastating metric that was developed by the state, and it really has been very accurate. So we were facing bad stuff. And I'm sorry of saying that, hey, we have 80% vaccinated, but it's only one shot. Only one shot.
Right.
Now, how much does the booster shot, the second shot, help? We don't know that. But
that's still up in the air, all those
numbers, it is,
how effective
right.
everything is.
And
are we getting to a point where we just maybe need a third shot, another booster?
Well, that's going to be a nightmare because the problem is they don't have the facilities open yet to handle the crowds, right? And we got a tremendous boost in vaccinations over the last weekend. Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Westchester County, we had about 6,298 persons vaccinated. This is big time improvement because for the last four to 5 weeks, we have only had 6,000 a week getting vaccinated at the county facilities. So there is tremendous interest now in getting vaccinated, and I'm looking forward to seeing the figures the rest of the week to see whether we double it. That would get us up at about 12,000, 13,000 a week, and we really need about 15,000 a week to get the rest of us with our second shots and more with first shots to start the ball rolling. So if those of us who have 2 shots already have to now get a booster, that is really going to mean you need more facilities pronto.
Could the whole problem be with Delta, with Lambda, with all these variants that might still be going around regarding COVID? And like we said, obviously, it's mostly Delta, a little Lambda, they say, and who knows what else might be out there or might be still to come. Could it just be that the shots we got already are already wearing off and we need more?
We don't know that.
We don't know.
No, we do not. And County Executive Latimer said yesterday that the vast majority of fully vaccinated are senior citizens, like over 65. And the major problem is our county workforce, not just county workers, but all the workers going into Manhattan, suffering through interminable traffic delays every day, driving in and out because they don't want to take the trains. And this is just a big problem. They have to get vaccinated. They really do. And Mr. Latimer trying to get the county force vaccinated, he doesn't yet know how many in the county of the county workforce are vaccinated. I find that preposterous.
Here's a number I just came across right before we began our show here. In New York City, only 60% of teachers are vaccinated. Now, we've had this football going back and forth, political football, about whether to fully open schools or have some kind of school lockdown, everybody studying from home again. We've heard talk about that again, maybe in the last few days. So if the teachers are so worried about being around COVID, why are only in New York City, at least, only 60% vaccinated and 40 are not? If you told me 80-20, I could see that. 85-15, but 60-40, that's
not good at all. Good. It's an absolute shock that it's 60% only vaccinated. The question is, why? Did 40% of the teachers refuse it?
Or why doesn't the union say, hey, you got to go get a vaccine?
Well, the union was the one who pushed for this, for vaccination in the first place. Now, my daughter was vaccinated where she teaches in the South Bronx, and we were all under the impression that all teachers had to be vaccinated.
That's what I thought, too.
Absolutely, John. I mean, this is a huge lie that was perpetuated. And so now, but nowhere was this reported anywhere during the last school year.
No. John Bailey is the executive editor and publisher of White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, WhitePlainsCitizenNetReporter.com. And also, John is the host of a couple of TV shows locally on your FiOS and Altice outlets, White Plains Week and People to Be Heard. John Bailey, how have businesses recently reacted to a massive reopening over the past few months? Have you seen anything on county sales tax receipts over the past 8 weeks or so, what the numbers might be?
Well, thank you for reminding me, because I really have to check on last month's sales tax. I got really caught up in the daily spread of COVID numbers, which no one was reporting in the detail that I go into, and that's what got me. So it doesn't really matter what the sales tax is. It's down. It has to be down. And it may be slightly ahead, but the county is doing better than White Plains is last month. But as I say, this months are coming in. However, we are now waiting in White Plains the what do they call it? The restart of the Mitchell, which is it's an apartment building in White Plains, which supposedly is going to be finished at the end of the year. A great new building that everybody would flock into, but now it's not going to be done by the end of the year because their original contractor went bankrupt. They have hired a new contractor, and now the county is promoting a construction work fair, which on August 25th, asking for persons interested in getting into the building trades or wanting to work on these projects to supplement the labor force to come by and be interviewed. This is unprecedented. They're casting a net for construction workers to join an ongoing project.
Well, there is a lot of construction
there
going
is.
on around White Plains and around the county. You need workers, you need people. Could the problem be the extra $300-400 a week people are getting around the country? Varies by state, I guess, whether you get an extra 3 or 4. This ends in September. Could it be that maybe in September that we'll have what we need for construction trades and other lines of work like restaurants who are getting slammed by not having enough people to serve, to wash dishes, to do this, to do that, to even greet people at the door when they walk in?
Well, that, of course, remains to be seen. Why aren't the restaurant workers coming back? Have they all left for greener pastures?
Some have gone into other lines of work. People I talk to locally say it's a matter of they're getting the extra unemployment until September, and they just don't want to come back to work. And I do get those who run restaurants, who manage restaurants, and say, I can't blame them because we can't pay them all that extra.
Well, I tend to think that this is a invention of the Republican opposition to helping people, which is sort of ingrained in the Republican psyche for at least 50 to 60 years, way back into the 30s. The Republicans never wanted to help all the people that were down and out in the Depression.
And that's going back 90 years.
Yes, that's right. 90
century.
Years.
Yeah.
What is it about being a Republican that doesn't want to help people? It's beyond me belief that you wouldn't want to help people if they were down and out. Where is the
let's
sympathy?
talk about people who are down and out. Now, if you are behind on your rent, anywhere around this country, you can get kicked out. The national rent moratorium has expired. This was something instituted by the CDC in the early days of the pandemic, and it was just renewed again and again and again until here we are now. And now the Biden administration is sitting on its hands saying, well, there was a recent court decision that said the CDC overstepped its bounds, And there's nothing we can do that the CDC should not have done this in the
Since
first
when?
place. So
Since when does
says they went too far, so nothing we can do. That's a cop-out to me.
The Supreme Court is in the business of copping out on the big decisions. They are in the business of it now. They do nuances. Well, in this circumstance, that's not right. But how about an overall view of what is good? Where has the Supreme Court gone? It has gone down the rabbit hole.
Well, we see AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of the Bronx and Queens representative, and a local representative, Jamal Bowman, who, of course, took over the seat that Eliot Engel held for many a year after defeating Engel in the primary, winning the general election last November. Jamal Bowman representing southern Westchester, southern Yonkers, southwestern Yonkers area, and a portion of the Bronx, too. And he's been among the leaders, among those saying, hey, Biden administration, along with AOC and others saying, come on, you got to come through for people who might wind up on the street if we don't do anything here, regardless of what the Supreme Court says you can or cannot do.
What do you mean might? They will end up on the street.
They will.
Uriah Heeps of the world, the Uriah Heeps of New York State and across the country are now being carte blanche to throw people out instead of helping them, bearing with it. See, like, what can you pay? And blah, 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 whatever. But I mean, this is Dickensian. If they don't extend that, or at least, arrange
find a way to work with it somehow.
Yeah, well, that's what people used to do. Now you can't pay the rent, and we're paying you all this back money. Well, you have to go out. But remember, every landowner or landlord or huge company that owns buildings has a tremendous payback mechanism. I'd
rather, if I were a landlord, have somebody pay me $25 instead of nothing and say, okay, let's see what you can do next time, but 25 is better than zero. Zero never works. I came across an article in the past few days, and the writer of that article said, okay, so many people are getting so much extra in unemployment, $300 a month, $400 a month, it depends upon what state you have to be in.
That's nothing in this area.
Right. But if you're getting that, well, how come you can't use that to go pay the rent that you owe, or at least some of that back rent that you owe, which, when you think about it, is a valid point, but even all that extra money has to go to other places, too, besides rent, and I'm not sure how much that argument really holds.
Well, it's a sophist argument, because you cannot make that argument unless you go in and delve into the facts of what people are using the money for. Nobody's done that.
Right.
And that I know of. And on top of that, landlords and people who own big buildings, and lots of them, think nothing of reneging on a contract. Look at what Lennar has done with the White Plains on 2 projects, this Mitchell and the White Plains Pavilion. Now, they haven't reneged, but they certainly are taking their sweet time in making decisions about them because of their own bottom line.
Right. And they've adjusted based upon what they feel they need, whether or not it's been negotiated or not.
This is Lennar was building a building outside Washington, D.C., a huge DC, a huge complex, and with no problems, but they wouldn't do anything on a project in White Plains. It was very interesting to me that White Plains got second place besides the development outside Washington, D.C.
Speaking about projects and buildings, federal infrastructure, do we have a bill or not? I have heard a myriad amount of times now the past few weeks, we have a deal. There's still no deal.
You don't have a deal if you don't have the deal.
Deal, right. So
yes,
why did you keep
come on, what is this crap we're hearing from them? It's now we're in the 8th month of the Biden administration saying we are going to get this deal done. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened, and now those wonderful, hardworking senators and House members are off for a month. You can't take a month off. I can't take a month off reporting the news, but they do. They should be working their
rear ends off. They should be.
That's
working.
right,
No doubt
for a
about that.
month. How about doing a little work instead of chasing interns?
Like they say, get them back to D.C. and let's help out renters and let's.
I'm not happy with and I'm tired of our representatives from New York, particularly, just saying we're doing this, we're doing that, and again, our state representatives up in Albany, they're not concentrating on the big elephant, and that is COVID. And if they think that the recovery is going to happen right now, I think that is really in jeopardy with this new spread, particularly as it affects the schools. If you open those schools, particularly in New York City, and they don't have more than 60% vaccinated, I think you're going to have a real bad spread among the children. I just think that. I worry about it. I worry about it constantly. Don't you?
I do. Do you think schools will open fully in September? Here we are a month away. Things change day to day, moment by moment, minute to minute.
They have to. Otherwise,
who says they have to? Who says they have to?
They have to if the economy in the state, New York State, is going to recover. Either that, or you have to provide some sort of daycare so people can go back to work if you go remotely. That's why the schools have to open on time from a politician's point of view. It's not my view. I think we should really take a hard look at how many are vaccinated and really put restrictions in, like the children do have to wear masks in school. And
right now, the answer is yes.
Yes. Well,
all right. So how much does Randy Weingarten and the UFT nationally figure in, locally and nationally, with this?
I do not know.
More and more she talks every day as if there are going to be some kind of restrictions, and more restrictions come September.
Well, Randy Weingarten makes sense because she was the one who pioneered the idea that we've got to vaccinate the teachers, otherwise we're not going in. That's the only thing politicians understand. Hard positions, no compromise, and positions that are reasonable. How many times do politicians take unreasonable, somewhat reckless propositions because they're popular? They do that a lot, particularly up in the Albany ivory towers there, made of clay.
The Albany ivory towers, where, as you've talked about earlier in our segment here, the Cuomo investigation continues. It continues federally. It continues in other venues. Where are we with the Cuomo investigation right now?
We await the personal civil lawsuits to be filed by every one of these women who have complained about Governor Cuomo, because obviously they must have the facts to back up and witnesses to back up, and so they got to open and shut damages suits against the governor and the state. Where are those civil suits? That's my big question. I mean, it is a tort lawyer's dream to go into a sexual harassment suit and extort from the state. Not extort, but I guess settlement from the state. Extort was the wrong word. Where are those suits? You saw what two suits did with Weinstein. Two suits did that to him. They ruined the man.
Does the governor think personally?
Not that he didn't deserve ruining, but I mean, I think the governor is...
Does he think he's in trouble?
Look, I don't think I've ever heard of somebody being questioned for 11 hours on anything by investigators.
The governor says
I've never heard of it.
Okay, his people say, and they're being accused of deflecting. His people say, well, Tish James, we hear, is running for governor. How much does all of this tie in?
Well, what these accusations that the governor is making about these prosecutors does, it sets up a suit to overturn any judgment. It sets that up, saying that it's prejudiced, and that would go up through the New York State Court, which is conveniently run by the Como appointee, Janet DiFiore. So if it ever got up there, I mean, the governor can deflect this because of the obvious prejudice of this investigation. It's obvious because if you appoint people that haven't liked him to begin with, it's prejudice, ipso facto.
Is all of this?
That's why we have juries selected.
Is all of this an attempt just to bring the governor down?
Yes. Absolutely.
What makes people think they'd be able to do that and get away with that in the state of New York, knowing how powerful Andrew Cuomo is and how powerful the people around him supposedly are? What would make a Tish James think that I can do this, or others think I can do this, or if we band it together, we can do this?
Well, the question is, who put Letitia James up to this?
Could it be her own doing, and that she does want to run for governor and says, I got to get Andy out of the way?
And she's not experienced enough to be governor. She really isn't.
You think others helped her go about this?
Yes.
Prodded her, convinced her, cajoled her?
I have no evidence of that. It's just
a thought.
It's suspicious to me that you've got the governor who is riding high because of his tremendous heroic management of the COVID situation. He gets back slammed by a person from a representative, I think, from Queens.
Ron Kim.
That's right. And he was told something in confidence, and he blabs it. Absolutely bad. Never, ever, anywhere tell anybody something you don't want out, because when you do, it will get out. I mean, and this is what happened. He got him on the we hurt the nursing homes, but nursing homes haven't been investigated, man. The nursing homes caused this. It was not Governor Cuomo. Hey, asked them if they could take care of them. They'd say they could. Give us back. We love their monthly dollars. And boom, they couldn't take care of them.
John Bailey is the executive editor and the publisher of White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, CitizenNetReporter.com. And John also hosts a couple of shows locally on your Fios and Altice outlets here in Westchester, White Plains Week and People to be Heard. John Bailey, we are in the middle of Westchester election season and the general election now 3 months
There's an
away.
election? There's an election this fall?
Yeah, in November, 3 months away.
Do we care?
Yeah, that leads to my next question. Does Christine have a chance to unseat George Latimer as county executive? Why would she want to be a sacrificial lamb?
No, I would do an under-over bet.
Which is what?
you bet based on how much she is going to lose by, and if you're right, you make a ton of money. It's
right, but what are the numbers on the under-over bet? What are your numbers on that? 90-10? 80-20?
I see no way that she gets... If she gets 30%, I will be surprised.
How about 82-18? Adds up to 100, right?
She's not campaigning. That's the whole problem. If you were serious, you'd be campaigning. Right. I have asked her a few times to be on People to be Heard, and it's been postponed a couple of times, and now it is already August. She could have been on. She could have made a few statements, had some clips that she could put up on her website. Doesn't have that.
She could have been on again after being on a first time by now.
Look, it's tough to get people to come on to People to be Heard. So I could have had her on 6 straight weeks if she wanted.
Why campaign like this then? It is a form of campaigning.
Because she is. I do not understand. They could have nominated Astorino again.
They could have.
They could have, and he would say, everything I can see happening has happened under the Latimer administration. He postpones decisions. He does feel-good legislation. He doesn't enforce restrictions. I can see it now. Where is that? Where are these complaints coming from the Republican candidate? None. No complaints. No criticism. I mean, perhaps no one has, and it's like back in the O'Rourke days.
Now, I must say a number of Republicans I've spoken to throughout the pandemic give George Latimer very high marks for the way he's handled everything and brought everybody together. Could that
if you wanted to beat the guy, why would you do that? If you wanted to beat him, why would you do that? You don't do that. They could take a lesson from the neo-fascists out in the White House and the Senate. And the House of Representatives and the Senate. I mean, do they praise Biden for being so conciliatory?
No,
they don't. Now
No.
And they have maintained a real good, actually pathetic political stance, which preserves their base and makes the job extremely difficult in 2022.
Maybe falls in line with a lot of what I think. I think that, what's going on down in D.C. obviously is spurred by very conservative people from other parts of the country, where to me in the Northeast, most Republicans are what I consider to be Democrat light. They're not that conservative. On a scale of 1 to 10, they kind of max out at around a 4 maybe, which is basically middle of the road. And it may be easier for Republicans in this part of the world to work together with Democrats, i.e., Republicans locally in Westchester, and the way they work together with the county executive, George Latimer.
They govern together. They're all one party here in Westchester County.
Democrat light.
That's right. They're all one party. The Republicans, get some things they want, and they retain positions of respect, and they don't ever complain about the way the county is being managed by the Democratic county executive. In fact, the Democrats themselves cooperated with Mr. Astorino, passing 2 absolutely catastrophic budgets, which created the present. Nobody ever writes that except me or says it, but I remember it. And the reason they do that is because the papers today are afraid. They're afraid. They have no crusading chops.
They do want to keep good relations with every public official, regardless of that official's party.
Yes. Well, actually, I really regret my horrible relations with elected officials, and I'm particularly proud of the fact that every time I call, nobody returns the call.
And
they don't want to talk to me.
There's the other side of the coin. You got to do your job journalistically, too, like you do.
Well, you have to dig out some stuff, like analyzing the vaccinations Monday. It came to me as an epiphany, just looking at the stats. And I say, wait a minute, it was 6,000 a week for 5 or 6 weeks. And now it's up to 6,000 in 3 days. This is a trend. People are beginning to listen. This is the one piece of good news, that the third wave in Westchester, and nobody's calling it a third wave except me, but if it's number 3, it is a third wave.
Yeah.
That's why the press is so wishy-washy today.
That's why nobody calls you back, right?
That's right. Exactly.
By the way, you've mentioned Rob Astorino a couple of times, and maybe he could have run for county executive again. He is running for the Republican nomination for governor. He's got a tough nut to crack, I think, in Lee Zeldin, Eastern Long Island congressman, who has a good national profile, especially his stance on issues in the Middle East. And, of course, Andrew Giuliani, too, Rudy Giuliani's son, running for the Republican nod for governor. Where does Rob Astorino stand now, a year and change out from the general election in 2022, but less than a year away now, I guess, from the Republican primary?
Well, I don't think many of the people locally know much about the rivals, but they do know the Astorino name. And I believe he's far more personable than the other two Republican candidates. You have to realize that you have to be reasonably warm to be run for governor. Now, Cuomo did not campaign in a really vicious manner.
Here we are.
I recall.
Right,
and that's one of his strengths. But now we know that Cuomo is all business. And he was basically emasculated by the Senate and the Assembly. And then, he was a bachelor. Where are you going to go to meet women? And
the governor's mansion, right?
They didn't have to go there. They didn't have to go there. Please. It's like inviting this chick to your fraternity house.
Inviting a chicken to the coop, right?
Yes. But
I hate to put
truly,
it that way, but
they have to realize if you do not want the governor's attention, you don't go to his mansion. Although you say, no, I really can't, or something like that. But if you're afraid that you have to do that, otherwise you will not, you will lose favor in the pecking order. That is one of the real problems of harassment and interpersonal relationships today. I get that, but the governor used bad judgment in doing that.
Here we are, late
if he did
2021. That he did. There's no question, and still, I think, a long way to go with the investigations. We'll see what happens. Here we are now, second half of 2021. Is it too early to start talking 2022 budgets locally? In Westchester, in localities around the county. Is it too early?
No, it's not, because they have to really look seriously at their tax handles. If the recovery does not come back, the sales tax is going to be flat. And right now, it is flat. And it remains to be seen how they're going to make that up. Like, the legislature is guaranteeing all sorts of gazillions for the school districts through the next 3 years. But that money's going to run out. It's going to run out. And that is the question that I'm told by Shelley Mayer, that they have allowed enough leeway to fund it past when it runs out. And so that may be true, but the local cities and towns have to really look at things really carefully. And
you mentioned State Senator Shelley Mayer, 37th District, covering places like Yonkers in the South.
Yeah, she's been pretty forthcoming since she
goes up into the central part of the county to places like Bedford and Armonk. So she's got she covers a pretty good swath of the county and gets a pretty good read on everything going on, from places like Yonkers and New Rochelle urban areas to more open spaces like a Bedford or an Armonk or a Portchester, which is kind of it is urban, but around Portchester, you have more open spaces like Rye and Mamaroneck and Harrison. So that's a pretty good read of what goes on around the county demographically that she has from her standpoint in the 37th. If we can't bring this extra tax money in, let's say COVID gets worse, maybe not as bad as it was, but we go progressively downhill from here for a bit. How do we make these monies up? Is it possible to make these monies up in a different way, shape, and form? Or is the only way then massive budget cuts, whether it be in a locality like a Harrison, like a Croton, like an Ossining, like a Pleasantville, or at the county level?
Well, that depends on what happens on the monetary take-in, but it's something they have to be thinking about now. And any community that does anticipate a rise in their sales taxes based on wishful thinking, which the county seems to always do, then we have a problem.
Sounds like somebody's calling you back, by the way, back there. It sounds like somebody is calling you back. How do you like that?
It's
you talk about it, there you go. You got a call from somebody.
Right.
Well, John, let's see what happens in the next few months of 2021 as we head towards 2022 and those budgets start to come together in the final quarter of this year. John Bailey, as always, great pleasure to have you here with us here on Westchester Talk Radio. Let's do it again real soon.
Until that time, and anybody I have offended on this broadcast, my apologies. It's what I do.
That is what John does. John Bailey is the executive editor and publisher. Publisher comes first, then you can be the executive editor after that, right? Of White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, WhitePlainsCitizenNetReporter.com, also the host of a couple of TV shows locally on your local FiOS and LT's outlets here in Westchester, White Plains Weekend, People to Be Heard. Who do you have coming up on some upcoming shows, John?
Well, Thursday we are going to interview. Well, you were on last week on People to Be Heard.
Yeah, I heard.
That's right. And
People to Be Heard, I heard I was.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You were on there. Oh, so see, you have a following.
Ah, well, that's good.
Right.
Yeah. I don't get called back all the time, too. Like
and yes, and we're going to be interviewing Richard Cerulli, who is a local author, and
called there too, John. I see.
That's
and you have Chris Burdick coming up too, state senator.
Right. Oh yes, I'm interviewing Mr. Burdick Friday morning, and he'll be on next week.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, which show is he going to be on? White Plains Week?
People to Be Heard.
People to Be Heard, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And Mr. Burdick he's been in the assembly for 6 months, and he may have a lot to share with us on.
He's expanded his base from Bedford, where he was before, right? No question about that in the state senate. All right, John Bailey here on Westchester Talk Radio, WestchesterTalkRadio.com. Again, catch him on his TV shows locally, FiOS, Altice, and those shows are White Plains Weekend, People to Be Heard. I'm John Marino, and we are produced by Sharc Creative here at Westchester Talk Radio, WestchesterTalkRadio.com, and we are made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built by Lipolis Electric. Don't be left in the dark. Get Lipolis by White Plains Hospital and by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard, along with our good friend, Michael Labriola. Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and by Tompkins, Mahopac Bank. You find them up and down all throughout the Hudson Valley. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube, and download our app. Yes, you can go get it now and take us with you everywhere you go, anytime, any place, anywhere. The app is called Westchester Talk.